Project brought to you by Cisco DevNet. My name is Ken Alger. I'm part of the DevNet team here at Cisco, and I'll be your host. So, what in the world is Wild West coding? What is that all about? Sorry about that. So, Wild West coding. It's kind of my take on the software development process called cowboy coding. Now, what is cowboy coding? So cowboy coding is a software development practice where programmers kind of have autonomy over the development process by themselves. So this includes control of the project schedule, languages you might use, algorithms, tools, frameworks, coding style, kind of all that sort of thing. Um, there's really not a lot of coordination that exists with other developers, other stakeholders. You're kind of doing it by yourself. So that's very much similar to the process of coding in a live stream, right? I don't have a dedicated development team here. So standards are just going to be what I decide are going to be. I'll try to do as many best practices as I can. And I'll kind of be developing the application as we go along each week or each episode, and can very well choose tools, frameworks, and coding styles just because they kind of seem to work at any given moment. So what am I going to be building? You're here, you're watching some goofy guy in a cowboy hat doing coding. So what are we going to be building? Well, here in the US, which is where I'm based in Oregon, which is a big chunk of land between California and Washington, for those of you that aren't familiar with geography of the United States. It's summertime. With that, children are home from school. We have warm weather. There's pool parties and barbecues going on. People are spending time at lakes and rivers and doing all sorts of outdoor activities. And throughout the US and Western Canada, it's really kind of the height of rodeo season. And now, rodeos aren't just limited to North America, though. All right, Chile, Mexico, Argentina, Spain, Australia, many other countries have rodeo events throughout the year. But to keep with the theme of this Wild West coding, I thought that it'd be kind of fun to work on a rodeo themed application. So we'll start by building an API of rodeo data. Most of it's just fake data that I put together that kind of makes some sense, and we'll go over that here in a little bit. And then we'll build in some additional features. Along the way, we'll explore and implement security features such as authentication and authorization. We'll look to mitigate sensitive data exposure, implement logging, and many other different things. And we'll also be looking at the business use case for the features, why they're needed, and how we need to implement them. So I'm really excited to have you here. Join me along the way here. So let's saddle up and blaze a trail on a coding adventure with Wild West coding. So to start with, as I'm thinking about building this application out, I'm thinking, what language do we want to use, right? So here at Cisco DevNet, we have a lot of content around Python, great language. I've used it a lot. I've taught a lot of classes in Python, and it's a great language. But I thought, Go as a language is something that Cisco DevNet hasn't really leaned into a whole lot. And from a network operations standpoint, it's a language that quite a few people use. It's also a very popular programming language for all sorts of different things. So I thought it might be fun to build something out in Go. So let's, we'll be using the Go language. It's an open source language. It's really, the more I've kind of played around with it, it's really easy to learn. There's a lot of great things about it. So we'll be using the Go language, and then as you start thinking, we have our language picked. I can write everything myself, or I can utilize a framework. And there's a lot of different frameworks out there available. So the framework that I found that I kind of been playing around with a little bit, it's called Gin. They make reference to drinks. Go, for whatever reason, has some different frameworks. One is Martini, and then Gin is kind of a different one. It's crystal clear like gin is. So, ha ha ha. But the gin framework is what we'll be using. It's really performant. It's fairly easy to use as well. So let's get started here. I'm going to be using JetBrains Goland as my IDE. I'm going to be using Go version 1.20.6. So let's do Wild West coding, and we'll make it, we'll just call it the Rodeo app, and we'll go and create it. And there we go. So in the terminal here, in order to get Gin installed, you're going to want to go get the Gin packages, and that we'll make this full screen. So in the terminal here, you can do go get, and from github.com, I think it is Gin, go inc Gin. Nope. There we go. It'll go out and get all those things. And once we have that installed, that's great. So let's go in here and we'll make a new Go file. We'll call this, we'll call it main.go because it'll be our main thing here. Our package will be main, which is going to be the main module for this package. Let's minimize this, and we'll just set this up here and do a quick little hello world script to make sure everything's up and running. So we'll start by importing. We'll do github.com. It's Gin right there. So we'll import that, and that's going to give us access to a few things. So the big thing is we get a router, right? So we'll set a router equal to Gin, and we want that to just be default. Okay, and then our router, we're going to set up a HTTP GET route. We'll just do the relative path there of slash, so just the index page, and we will pass in that a function. We're going to take a context, which is a Gin context, and what will we have that do? Well, let's have the context return JSON. We'll have it return a 200 code saying, hey, everything's groovy, and we'll have it pass out our JSON. We'll just say message is hello world, welcome to Wild West coding. All right, close that. Looks like we have all of our braces, and then down here we're going to do router and run, which will run everything and give us a web server and web browser, or serve it up. So let's clear this just for some screen room there, screen real estate. And then if we do a go run main.go, it hopefully will work. There we go. So we're listening on serving HTTP on 8080. If we now switch over here to our browser, and let's do localhost 8080. Hey, look at that. We have, we'll zoom in here a little bit. We have hello world. So that's awesome. Pretty easy to get set up, right? I mean, we have, where did my IDE go? There we are. All right, so just a few lines of code, and we have a web server going. We have JSON being returned, and that's great. So there's several different ways that we can test this out. We don't always have to go to a browser. We can use curl commands and that sort of thing. One of the tools that I personally really like is Postman. So if we go in here to Postman, and we can set up a GET request here, and we will do our local host 8080. We send that off, we should get our message back. So that's great, and we'll be using Postman quite a bit here to test things out. So let's set this as our GET request for index. And we'll create a collection here for Wild West Coding API. And we'll do there, and now we can save that. So now anytime that we just want to go up to our index request, we can test that out just to make sure that everything's okie dokie. So as you can imagine here, as we get things built out a little bit more in our application, setting all this up inside a function main isn't going to be particularly scalable. So one of the things that you can do here with Gen is we can do handlers. So if we do like an index handler, right? And we, again, it's gonna take in this context, and from there, we will just cut this, and we'll paste that up there, right? Now here inside our main function, when we set up our paths, we can, instead of doing all this, we can just call the index handler. All right, so now if we run this again, we run go build. All right, so we don't want to build it. We want there, and we'll run it again. And now if we go over to Postman, we should get the same thing back. So that's great. So now we have a handler going, and we're still, everything's working, which is pretty slick. And we can now build out other paths. One of the things that's pretty handy and common is if we do if we want to pass in somebody's name or some variable within the URL, we come in and we do, so we'll pass in JSON again. We'll pass in, and JSON needs to be all caps. Pass in 200. We'll pass in the message here with hello plus name. That's great. And then to get the name, we do the name is going to equal the parameters. Right, so we're going to pass in a parameter here, and we'll do it by name, and we'll say it's name. Right. So that should work. And if we come down here to router and get, we do name, we do this as a name handler. We should be getting that in. And why is that? Because this, I think, needs to come out here. There we go. All right, so now if we run this again, we'll stop that. We'll run our server. And if we go over to Postman, and we're going to do here, and we're going to do Ken because that's me. And we hit it, we see hello Ken, and I obviously didn't put a space there. So if we come back over here, we're going to want a space in there just to clean things up. We'll run it again, go back over to Postman. And we should see hello Ken. There we go. So that's pretty spiffy, pretty easy to get set up and running, and really just in a few lines of code, we have a couple of different routes that we can set up. So I mentioned that we're going to do like this rodeo app, build a rodeo API based on some rodeo data that I've kind of cobbled together kind of in my head. The app, in my world of thinking, the app is going to do things like keep track of the various rodeos that are going on. There will be some, down the road here, we'll get into like handling ticketing for the seats. If you are a rodeo organizer, you obviously going to need some admin privileges to add participants, contestants in the rodeo. Being from Cisco, if you're setting up a network at the rodeo, it'd be great to be able to make sure that the network is functioning correct. So we'll look at implementing those types of features down the road as well. So what is this data that I've been kind of toying at and talking about? What does that can look like? So I've put together, some data on some rodeos. This is all in JSON format. I'm going to be using MongoDB as the database. So this is all JSON based on a MongoDB data model. So you have an underscore ID, which is the unique ID for each document or in the record. We have a name of the rodeo. Pro rodeo will be a Boolean value of true or false, so you can tell if it's part of the pro rodeo circuit. Start date and end date for the rodeo. The venue will have a venue ID, the name of where the arena is. The seats are going to be an array of seats. Again, these will either be 0 or 1, indicating whether they're sold or not, and we'll figure that portion of things out down the road. Based on the seat array and what the stadium looks like, it'll have the number of seats available. The coordinates are the longitude and latitude for the venue itself. And then for each rodeo, we'll have a list of events. So if you're familiar with rodeos and the pro rodeo circuit, there's a few kind of approved or categorized events. There's the rough stock event, which are the saddle brawl, the bareback, and the bull riding. Those are all timed, or not timed, but you have 8 seconds to ride a bull, and then you get scored, and based on how the bull does and how the participant does, they get a score, and whoever has the highest score at the end of the weekend or at the end of the rodeo wins the prize money. In timed events, you have steer wrestling, tie down roping, team roping, and barrel racing. So those are all just timed. Whoever competes and does it fastest is the winner. And then I'm throwing in an other event. Some of the rodeos that I've gone to, have things like cow milking or donkey racing or whatever it is. So just kind of a placeholder there. Now, one of the tools I mentioned that I'm going to be working here with MongoDB, one of the other tools that I will be using is a tool called MongoDB Compass. It allows you to go in and see all the documents in the collection in a visual manner once they've been stored. So I've just filtered for this one particular start date of a rodeo event, which was the one that we were just looking at. But if we delete that, we do a find on all of them, we see that there's 105 documents in this collection. And most of it's just faker data. It's not real at all. And some of it is absolutely nonsensical. That would be a really long rodeo from 81 to 2010. But it's just data. MongoDB Compass here allows you to visualize the data. Here, if we analyze it, we see that underscore ID is a string, end date is a string, events are an array of an array of strings in this case. We have names, and it kind of shows the distribution of that. Pro rodeo, you have in this data set 61% are pro rodeo, and the remaining 39% are non. We have a published at date, start date, and updated. So if we update the document, and then when you look at the venue, one of the things that you have with those coordinates, and we'll look here, based on those coordinates within MongoDB Compass, it plots where those coordinates are on a scale. And I don't know why we have two different versions of this, but we can go in and explore that. And here you see this is the more faker data that was generated. So I don't know if some of these, you're writing tuna instead of bulls. I don't know. But there we go. So that's kind of some of the data that we're going to be looking at and kind of exploring from an API standpoint. So let's go back over here to our application code that we had. All right. So one of the first things that we're going to need to do here is kind of take that JSON data and convert that into a struct in Go. So if we want, let's make a new directory here. We'll call it models. Just kind of put all of our data models in there, make it a little bit easier for us. And we will do a new one of rodeos. So let's call this, a specific rodeo, right? So it's in package models. So that's where that's going to live. We're going to import, since we're using MongoDB, we're going to want the Go MongoDB driver. We want bson and primitive. We're going to use that. And then we're also going to use time, since we're doing the published at and updated dates. All right, so in Go, we want a struct here, and it's going to be a type of a rodeo struct. And we need to go in and let's go back to our, where did it go? Here we go. Just to make sure we have everything, let's copy this over here. We'll put this in. All right. And we're going to do this manually just to show everybody a few little things here that you can do with Gen that make it kind of fun. So we're going to do an ID as the name, and it's going to be a primitive of an object ID. Looks like I'm going to need to import that. Oh, my imports disappeared. That's a lovely feature of GoLand here. So we want to import, bring that back in. We're going to import, what was it? Go MongoDB driver, and I think it's BSON primitive. All right, so we'll bring that in here in a minute. We're going to do a name, and it's going to be a string, and pro rodeo, rodeo, not rodeo. That's going to be a Boolean value. What's next here? Start date. Start date is going to be a string. End date will be a string. So venue. So one of the things in MongoDB, data modeling, you can have nested documents. So here, if you recall, venue had another document in here. So venue itself is going to be a struct, and it's going to have a venue ID, which will be an integer. You'll have a name, which will be a string. Seats are going to be an array of ints. Okay. And I think we probably want to keep our naming conventions in order there and capitalize everything there. Seats available, that will be an integer as well. And then the coordinates, that's going to be an array of float 64. All right. So we have all that done. We can clear that out. We're going to add in here to our data. We're going to do a published at. I always like to have that sort of thing in there, just so that you can see when things are created and if you go in and update it. So that's going to be a time, not time value, and updated at. That will be time, not time. And then our events. So again, that's going to be another structure. And that's going to be, we're going to have rough stock, the array of strings. Time will be an array of strings. And then other be strings. All right, so we can go back down through here and make all that go, and we need to close that out. And now it looks like all of our little errors are gone except for that. So we need to go and import our MongoDB driver. So let's go over to the web. Come up here. And I have forgotten what the MongoDB driver import statement is, or how you get that for MongoDB. So MongoDB go driver bson. Let's see here. Working with bson and Go. So installing, quick start maybe. All right, so there's our dependency. Let's see if that works over here in here, if we paste that in there. Yeah, looks like we still have an error there. So if we do, let's scroll this up. Oops. Paste that in there. Let's see if we can get these on primitive. These on. All right, so let's go back here. Install Go Mongo bson. Let's go take a look here and see what they say. Well, that's what we tried, and that didn't seem to work. Okay, so let's see. I thought we tried that, but back here. And is that what was there? That is what's there, and that didn't do anything. Oh, well, now it looks like it's synced a little bit better, and our errors are gone away. So that's good. So now we have our struct, and we can take a look at that now. All right, so we have our package main that is doing some minor little things here. We have our struct. Let's go over here, and just for sample data's purposes, we are going to select all of this, go back to GoLand, and let's make a new file. We'll call it rodeos.json. We'll just paste that in there so that we can access that in kind of the testing API sort of way. All right. So if we want to, again, in this format here, it seems like from a best practice perspective, we should be pulling all these handlers out into a different file, right? Because we're going to have several of these, and the separation of concerns, we really just want to have this main.go handle the running of the app. So let's create a new directory. We'll call it handlers. All right. And inside here, we're going to be doing things about rodeos. So if we do a rodeo handler, okay, so now we're in here. All right, so there's a couple things that we're going to want to import. We're going to want to import our models. So rodeo app models, that'll be good so that we can have access to that. And then down here, we're going to need to be working with our rodeo handler struct, right? So we'll make a rodeo handler struct here, and that's going to have a collection, and it's going to be a Mongo collection, right? We got that import in there, and that's great. And it's also going to have a context. And we can pull in context.context. All right, and that import got handled as well. Great. So we're going to want to probably, as we're looking at this, one of the first things that we're going to be looking at is getting a list of all of our rodeos, right? And that makes some sense. So let's write a function here. We'll have a handler that takes a rodeo handler, and we'll call this list rodeos handler. Right? And that's going to be take the context, which is a gin context. All right. We need our curly braces there for the function. All right, so our rodeos that we are generating, we're going to get from our rodeos.json, and that is, sorry, it's bugging me. I spelled that one wrong, so let's refactor that and rename it. There we go. All right, so we're going to list our rodeos, and it's going to be returning here. We're going to have it return an indented JSON. We're going to have it return an HTTP status of OK. And we want it to return the rodeos. All right, so it's returning the rodeos, and we need to define what that is now. So we're going to do the rodeos is going to be equal to, we'll have it make a model rodeo. Right? So how are we doing that? We need to read in the JSON file. How do you do that in Go, you might ask? So read from JSON in Go. Where are we going here? All right, reading structured data. So it looks like we can read that in. So let's just copy this in and see how we can deal with that. All right, so file name is going to be rodeos.json. Again, I'm spelling things wrong today. I don't know why. Maybe it's too much time on PTO last week. All right. And it looks like we're getting an error here. What is that saying? Probably something is deprecated. All right, so let's go back to over here and see what the best way, how to parse that. Defining struct instance. All right, so we will, let's try unmarshalling that from the JSON format. if we do oh, because we haven't read it in yet. Well, that makes some sense, right? So let's go back over here. Like I mentioned, I do Python most of the time. So Go is a bit of um, a new thing as well for me. Um, Read JSON file. We just looked at that one. That's not what we want. Reading and parsing a JSON file, users.json. Here we go. So we will open our JSON file. All right, so let's make all this go away. We'll replace that. This is rodeos. JSON file, error, opened, rodeos.json. JSON file close. So let's just test that out here. We'll go over to our main.go, and inside the index handler, let's do that. And then if we run our run this again. All right, so we're listening, come back here to Postman, and we just run this. We should see our message, and over here, we didn't get, successfully opened rodeos.json. Awesome. Let's stop that. Come back here. So that methodology there and that code works to open that file up. That's great. So we come back over here to our rodeo handler. So we're going to open that up. Okay, so great. So we have it opened, and now we want to read in our data. Back over here. So unmarshalling our data. So we've read in our, we'll read in our JSON, it looks like, and we'll unmarshal it, and then we should be able to use it. So let's try this out. So we've read it. Read all is yet another deprecated thing, so we won't try that one. Isn't technology and coding great? All right, so we'll do parsing, parse JSON file in Go. Let's take a look at this one. So we have there, we have our users, file is opened, defer file content close. Okay, that makes some sense. So byte result, these guys are calling for the read all method as well. So if we come in here and do go read all deprecated, what is it saying we should be doing now? So since we're using Go 1.20.6, deprecated is so read all. Oh, so we just need to be using io.readall and not the ioutil. There we go. Come in here. Let's paste that back in. We'll do io read all. There we go. All right. So come back in over here. That makes some sense now. We have Slurpee ads. Yay. So we can have that. All right. Okay, so we're going to unmarshal that into our users. So if we do what was that syntax again here? JSON unmarshal. Okay. JSON unmarshal. And we want the byte value, and we're going to do that into rodeos. And we want to move this up here, I believe. Yeah. Okay, so now if we do this and we have that function, we can go test that out. All right, so if we go back over here to main.go, let's do a different router.get. I'm going to do it with rodeos, spell it correctly that time. And we're going to do a rodeos handler. And we're going to do it the list rodeos. All right. And we can make this, we can clean this up a little bit up here by coming in here and saying we're going to do a rodeos handler, handlers, lowercase. All right. So that's great. And then the other thing that we're going to want to have in here eventually, and we'll skip that for right now, but we're going to want to have some sort of initialization function in here. And boy, I cannot spell rodeos. So why is that underlined and not happy? So can I use that as the type handler function? Well, so we want it's the handlers. Okay, so why is that giving me an error? So what? Well, that's not what I want. All right, so in handlers, we have that isn't working right or defined correctly. So we want that there. It's taking in collection and the context. Well, right now we're not having it take in a collection though, right? Not using the database yet. Okay, so it still is the type handler function. Cannot use handlers. Interesting.
Ken,
Interesting.
I'm gonna break in for just a voice,
Oh, sure.
a thorough voice from the background. I'm gonna break in for a moment. From Ajay, I think is how you pronounce their name on YouTube. I'll put it up on the screen. Said should use Rodeo's handler, and then I'll put right up on the screen the string that they recommended.
Um,
See
okay,
if
let
that
me see.
helps.
Let me see where you're putting that.
Looks like it's rodeos handler dot rodeo handler dot list rodeos handler is what they suggested.
So make this go away.
So they said lowercase rodeos, capital H handler, all one. The O's. Yeah. Then after that, yeah. Then after that is capital
Hey,
R rodeo, capital H, and then they had list at
that
the
looks
end
like
there.
that works. Let's try this out. Appreciate it. Thanks
Okay.
for the feedback. And
I'll go back on mute.
yeah, thanks, Jeff. And thanks everybody for watching. That's great to see that there's some folks here. Um, we're in the Wild West here, trying new things and learning as we go, which, I know many developers that learn as we go along. So let's go back here and we're going to run this again. And let's go over to Postman. I think the route was rodeos. Send it. We don't get back any JSON. Splendid, spectacular. All right, so we're doing something wrong here in the handler to produce that. Let me see here what is happening. All right. Well, how much time do we have left here, Jeff? Just a few minutes, right?
About 5 minutes.
5 minutes. So if we do, I have a feeling that there's something wrong in there, but let's little bit of troubleshooting here and see what's happening. Here, go back over to Postman. Send that. We still don't get any response there. But oh, we just get a whole bunch of bytes. Look at that. Isn't that some great and helpful information? All right. So so that should be unmarshalling the byte value and putting it into rodeos. But apparently it is not doing that. At all. So, all right. Well, I know we're running out of time and nobody likes to see people struggle with this. So I think what we're going to do here, Jeff, is I'm going to thank everybody for their time today. I'm going to research this a little bit and we will address it when we get back in 2 weeks. So this live stream is going to happen every 2 weeks. So if my calculations are correct, that puts it the August 15th. Does that sound about right, Jeff?
That sounds correct to me.
All right. Well, hey, everyone. I really want to thank everybody for attending, watching. If there are, features as we go along that you really think you want to see, or business application usage that you want me to explore incorporating into this application, reach out, leave comments on the videos and say, hey, I think, the idea of authentication and authorization is really important. We will be doing that, but, or two-factor authentication or anything else. Let me know and we'll put it on the Trello board and we'll try and figure out how to include it when it's most appropriate. So again, everyone, thank you very much, and we will see you in a couple weeks. Y'all have a great day.